just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about fearlessness. Fearlessness is a topic that I really want to focus on and I want to challenge myself around. And because we're in community with one another, I would like to challenge you as well. So I just wanted to share a little bit about how fear has stood in the way of some of the goals that I wanted to achieve, and how being fearless allowed me to finally achieve those goals. So, this is a very recent experience for me. I have several fears, like most of us. I have a fear of heights, I have a fear of closed spaces, I even have a fear of deep water. But one of the fears that I had that really stood in the way from me achieving a goal was a fear of being in enclosed spaces, like claustrophobia, and on a long flight. And where this fear really kicked in several years ago, I went on an amazing trip to Hawaii with my mom. And I'm so glad that I went. It was a wonderful trip. I was going on a medical conference, but the flight was very long. And during that long flight, I think it was the longest flight I had taken up to that point, I had a panic attack. I felt completely closed in. I wanted to jump off the airplane. And I literally felt like I was going to die because I was suffocating inside of that airplane. And that was a very, very scary experience, as I'm sure many of you who have that same fear or who have had a panic attack can relate to. So I was able to talk myself down in order to land and make it to Hawaii. But that fear never left me. That fear of being on a long flight never left. And this is how it impacted my life. I knew, like, one of my big goals is to travel internationally. And I knew that I wanted to travel to Africa as one of the main places that I wanted to go. I wanted to travel also to Asia and other places. And one of my best friends every year would say, okay, when are we taking our trip to Africa? When are we taking our trip here? And I'm not even sure if this was conscious on my part, but I always had an excuse. The excuses were great excuses. Maybe it was bad timing, or maybe financially it wasn't great. But the biggest reason was fear. I was afraid. I wanted to go, I still want to go to Australia and New Zealand so bad. But I was petrified of that long flight and what would happen if I had another panic attack on that flight. So, in order to accomplish one of the goals that I set for myself, I had to address that fear head on. Many of you may have seen that I went to South Africa and Zimbabwe and Zambia and briefly to Namibia. But in order to go there, I really had to stare that fear in the face. And it was an amazing experience. But let me tell you, there was a lot of anxiety building up to it. This was a trip that my husband wanted to do as his birthday gift. And I did not want to deny him the experience, and I wanted to do it too. So that helped me. Having the motivation and having a big why helped me. I think that was the first thing that helped me address the fear and become fearless in the situation. The second thing that helped me address the fear and become fearless in this situation was realizing that I could reach out for support and help and resources. So I made an appointment with my doctor. I let her know about my situation and the fact that I wanted to have a prescription for Xanax in case I had another panic attack during the flight. Because this was going to be a 14 to 16-hour flight, much longer than Hawaii, much longer flight than I'd ever been on. And I was not going to be in first class where I could stretch out, not even business class, not even economy plus. I was in economy, and those seats were almost just as tight as a domestic flight. So all of these things are swirling in my mind as I'm trying to navigate how I'm going to be fearless in this situation. So the first thing is I had a big why and a big motivation. The second thing is I reached out for help and for resources. So having the prescription of the Xanax made me feel a whole lot better because I knew I had it if I needed it. And then the third thing was I realized, I made a decision that this fear was not going to stand in the way of me reaching my goals. I only have this one life that I'm aware of, and I have things that I want to do. And I am determined that I'm not going to let this fear or any other fear stand in the way of me doing those things that I want to do. So I made a decision that whether I was afraid or not, I was going to do it anyway. So decision was made, trip was booked, plane tickets bought, everything was done. But even until the second before we went to the airport, I still was nervous and felt that fear. So let me tell you what happened. When I got on the plane, I got settled in. I tried to make the situation as comfortable for myself. I even gave myself a little bit of a mental trick. I've said, well, this is a 14-hour flight. I work 12-hour days in urgent care. And if you count the commute there and the commute back, that's basically a 14-hour day. So I'm just going to pretend that this is an urgent care shift that's a little bit slow where I'm sitting a lot. But if I can do a 14-hour urgent care shift, what's so different about doing a 14-hour flight? Hey, whatever it takes for you to trick yourself. And there was one point in the flight where my breathing started to get shallow, where I felt like I was hot and I was about to break out into a sweat, where I started to feel that nervousness in my stomach welling up into my throat, almost to the point where I couldn't speak. And I reached over to my husband and I said, here is my medication. If I tell you that I need this, I want you to have it and I want you to give it to me because I'm feeling like I might have a panic attack. And thank goodness it never turned into a full-blown panic attack. I didn't need to take the medication. I got through the flight, and the flight home was a piece of cake because I knew that I could do it. I had already conquered that fear. So I conquered fearlessness, and the rewards, I can't even quantify the rewards. The beautiful trip that I had, the experiences that I had, the transformation that happened within me was so worth addressing and conquering that fear. So I encourage you to be fearless. And whatever it is that's holding you back, be fearless. It doesn't mean you won't feel the fear. It doesn't mean you won't be afraid. It doesn't mean you won't even have physical symptoms of your fear. But do it anyway, because the rewards far outweigh the discomfort. And once you overcome that fear, it's so much easier to overcome the next fear and the next fear and the next fear. So that's what I wanted to share about fearlessness.